What's up, you sexy nerds? Jammo Rising here, and I just watched Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I was excited for this one, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not like huge on Marvel at this point, I haven't seen a single one of these movies since Endgame. But I'd qualify the Guardians movies as some of my favorite stuff in the entire comic book movie lexicon. Except for Logan, I guess, but that's a completely different story. I love the characters, the wackiness of the world design, bonkers creativity all around, and the assured direction of James Gunn, who to my mind has never made a bad movie, going all the way back to his demented Troma days. I did, however, go into this one with a bit of a cynical mindset, if I'm honest. I had just watched Avatar 2, for context, which I hated enough to make a lengthy and punishing review, and I was dreading the prospect of this being just another big, dumb, poorly written blockbuster packed with tropes and lean on substance, especially considering what I'd been hearing about recent Marvel products. Not the best. Turns out, I needn't have worried. James Gunn did it again, and far from walking away with a distasteful shade of cynicism in my icy little heart, I think it was my favorite Guardians movie. It had a few little problems, which we will go over, but they didn't really bother me in the grand scheme of things. I have to say, I loved it. I laughed out loud multiple times, and man, am I gonna admit this about a comic book movie? Am I? I think I have to. I can't lie to you guys. I'll never lie to you guys. I even cried a bit. The story is that some bad guys are after Rocket Raccoon for unknown purposes. They mortally injure him, and in order to save the life of their fellow little guardian, our heroes must embark on a planet-hopping journey that sends them into some of the darkest territory yet, both visually and emotionally. They team up with the parallel universe Gamora, visit an alternate Earth where squid monsters sell meth to teenagers, and all throughout we are treated to flashbacks that elucidate Rocket's miserable past. The first thing I want to talk about here is the creativity of the Guardians universe and production design. The Guardians films have always excelled in this regard, not shying away from weirdness, and this one took it to a whole new level. We've got space stations made of flesh, ridiculous alien creatures out the wazoo, including a hilarious variety of species that makes the galaxy feel like Star Trek on LSD, and touches of genuine misery that I did not expect. Speaking of strange creatures and moments that made me tear up, one of my favorite elements was the camaraderie of young Rocket and his fellow adorable nightmare creatures. This stuff was borderline Cronenberg, and struck me as both terribly sad and adorable at the same time. I had tears in my little Jammo eyes every time that poor rabbit was on screen. There's a million things that could be mentioned here, but the broader point is that I was utterly taken in by the imagination of the movie in visual terms. For me, it was like the antidote to Avatar 2, which was pretty, but I didn't really care because it contained nothing of substance for me to latch onto, and that brings us to the question of character. You can have all the visual wonder imaginable in your film, but none of it matters if there's no character or soul. And this is where Guardians 3 really wins. I was invested in the world because the film had genuine heart and likable characters who grow and learn through their tribulations. James Cameron, I know you're watching, pay attention because this part is important. Character arcs really matter. This film works not only because we like these guys and gals and Groots, but because there are emotional payoffs for each and every character. Peter and Gamora learn to accept each other on new terms. Rocket embraces his newfound purpose as leader. Drax gets to channel the dad energy that was ripped from him when Thanos killed his family, and on down the line. Even this guy gets a character arc. Fuck, even the dog has a character arc. Now granted, none of this is particularly complex, we're not talking Dostoevsky here, but it's perfect for a movie like this. It has all this imagination and beauty and ridiculousness, but it's in service of story, of character, of genuine emotion and feeling. And yes, some of it feels constructed, of course. This is summer blockbuster material, it's Marvel for fuck's sake. But these tried and true movie elements work when the love is there, and that's the difference. On that note, I was surprised at some of the critic reviews for this one. For one thing, people took umbrage with the story structure, which I grant you is something I have harangued other movies for, not to dwell too much on Avatar, but let this be a lesson that every movie is its own beast, and should be taken on the terms which matter to you in context. For me, the least important part of the Guardians movies has always been the plot. It's generally just a vehicle for character interaction and goofy set pieces. This is fine because the characterization is so vivid. And besides, I thought the story structure here was solid, so it was a non-issue for me. Where I will give some critical admission is that some of the humor was hit or miss. Also, the tone could vary a bit wildly at times, oscillating swiftly between somber and cheeky in a very Marvel way that could be momentarily distracting, and some overuse of tropes as pertains to Guardians movies specifically, such as too many pop songs. I know this is a James Gunn thing, he loves to do this, and it works really well when like the flaming lips come on as our characters gaze at the vastness of space, but other times it felt like we were just hopping from song to song without much interlude. This could have been toned down a bit, and James, if you're watching, how about throwing in some Behemoth next time? Just for me. One last critique, which seemed to override the others I saw, was that in character terms, this one felt like a retread, going through the Guardians' motions with diminishing returns. I suppose I can understand that, even if I don't agree. I really like the Guardians' shtick, I guess, so all the dialogue and I am Groots and so forth felt just as genuine as the first time. You know, I know it's what we do here in Movie Critic Land, often to vitriolic levels on this dinky little channel, but this is a movie I don't even want to analyze that critically, because all the little details don't really matter to me in the end. Everything just worked, and that's a really special feeling these days in a world of vapid big budget garbage. I was just strapped in for the ride from moment one, and I had a smile plastered on my face throughout the whole thing. In this case, I don't care if it was constructed magic to some degree, it was still magic, and I'll take the W. I think it was my favorite Guardians movie, and maybe even my favorite Marvel movie. Wow, weird. And you know what? I hope they don't make another one. The ending was perfect, and I don't need any more. In an age where Marvel is swirling down the toilet and James Gunn is moving on to other things, I dread the idea of somebody besides him taking the reins and messing it up. This may be under the Marvel umbrella, but these are James Gunn movies, and that overrides the cynicism. It's why they work. Taking the Guardians from under his singular vision and shoving them into some schlock plotline with some hired director at the helm just feels gross. Feels gross, but I'm sure they will. There's money to be made after all. But let's end on a positive note. Guardians of the Galaxy 3. It was everything I wanted it to be. And if more big budget studio movies had even a tenth of its charm, imagination, and character, I might even be tempted to go to a theater again. Strong words from a miserable goblin like me. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for something. I'm not sure what yet. Peace, love, and heartbreaking bionic bunny bros, and I will see you in the next one.